This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in places that could expose you to identity theft. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, their US-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Rated T to M. Hey, want to hear a PC Game Pass ad? I'll take your silence as a yes. Want new games on day one like Call of Duty Black Ops 6 or Stalker 2? I thought so. How about unlocking all the League of Legends champions when you link your Riot Games account? All for one low monthly price? Well, guess what? We got you. Learn more at xbox.com/PC Game Pass or click the banner. Stalker 2 available November 20th, 2024. Game catalog varies by region and over time. And that's the end of the script.
Atheists, agnostics, long-haired weirdos, short-haired weirdos, vandals, hooligans.
The government, hug the government, love the government, hug the government, love the government, hug the government.
Welcome to The Politics Guys, a place for bipartisan, rational, and civil debate on American politics and policy. I'm Northern Kentucky University political scientist Michael Baranowski. I'm joined today by my conservative counterpart, attorney and former deputy assistant to President Trump, May Mailman.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, May. So before we get started today, I want to sort of put an addendum onto the last thing we were talking about in the weekend show on DEI. And that I had some views I think that are largely out of line with the left. But I also wanted to say that, you know, there are times when clueless old white guys don't recognize that they're clueless old white guys. And I'm not saying that I obviously don't think that that's what I am in this instance. But listeners, if you heard that and you think, Mike, it's much more than common decency and not being a jerk, you just don't get it. I'm open to being convinced otherwise. I just haven't seen anything that's really convincing on that. But hey, change my mind. I certainly will be happy to listen to any arguments, links, whatever you want to show me, because you know, I've changed my views a lot over the years on these things, but I just don't see it when it comes to a lot of DEI. But if you think I'm wrong, I would love to hear about it. So anyway, with that out of the way, let's talk about something else that maybe I think plenty of folks on the left might not like me about. But so most everyone, I assume most everyone who's listening to this podcast knows that there's a significant gender gap in American politics. And it's been there for a while now. Men are significantly more likely to vote Republican than women. And in that sense, 2024 wasn't really much of a change. I mean, Trump had something like a 10-point margin with men. That's actually less than his 11-point margins in 2020 and 2016. And if we go back further than that, which I did, there's still a gap, but it's not as large. 8 in 2012, 5 in 2008, 7 in 2004, 9 in 2000, and 7 points in 1996. All advantages for male voters for voting for Republicans. In fact, you have to go back to 1992 to find an election in which there isn't a difference between male and female support for the Republican presidential nominee. That year, they were both at 38% for George H.W. Bush. And when you look at younger voters, that's 18 to 29 is how that group is generally defined, that gap widens even more. In 2024, young males went for Trump by a 14-point margin, though if you look at the reverse, the pro-Harris vote with young women was even greater. She won that demographic by 18, though Joe Biden won it by 32 points in 2020, so quite a big dip there. And so I've been thinking a lot about my party in general, but specifically how it can broaden what I think is a too narrow coalition of late. And given that men are, this is a weird way to think of men, but we're the largest minority group in the country. We are. It seems like a good place to start. When I was young, so very many years ago, I was attracted to the Republican Party. In fact, I was a Republican because it felt strong. I mean, my Republican Party was gonna crush those evil Ruskies. You know, it was the party of military might, rugged individualism, sucking it up, taking personal responsibility. I loved all that. I ate that stuff up. And to me, the Democrats felt weak. They always worried about everyone's feelings and everyone's a victim and there's caring and sharing and kumbaya. And as a young guy, at least, it all just made me kind of want to barf. I think that's changed in a lot of ways, those characterizations. I mean, Republicans led by Donald Trump, I would argue, love to play the victim. They're not necessarily as big fans of personal responsibility when they don't come out on top. But it still seems to me like Democrats do a poor job of projecting strength, and particularly in offering what I would say is a somewhat compelling vision to young men. I don't know if you remember this, but a while back, there was this, how often do you think about the Roman Empire thing on TikTok? Do you recall that? Or I don't know if you're a TikTok person at all.
I'm not a TikTok person, so I'm learning something new right now.
It was a big thing. You know how these things get viral on TikTok in weird ways, but it was like, I think women asking their boyfriends or whatever partners, male partners, how often do you think about the Roman Empire? And it turns out that a lot of young guys thought about the Roman Empire a lot more than you would have thought. And a lot of folks on the left seem to think that this is incredibly silly. It's like, oh my God, these guys have just watched Gladiator or 300 too many times, right? Now, I recently rewatched Gladiator, and one of the big motifs of it was strength and honor. And I got to say, it appealed to me a few weeks ago just about as much as it did back in 2000 when the movie came out, and I saw it back then. And when I think about which party has a message that seems to be more aligned with strength and honor, it's the Republican Party, even though I would argue that in a lot of ways, the Republican, at least in some instances, the Republican sort of manifestation of strength and honor can be kind of toxic. You know, it can too easily devolve into cruelty or scapegoating or xenophobia. And I guess what I'm getting at here is, May, while you're not a guy, you know a lot of guys. You even married one, right? So you're well versed in men. But why do you think so many men, including minorities, who Democrats have for a long time counted on as part of their coalition, why do you think so many of these guys seem to be drawn more to your party than to mine?
Feel your max with Brooks Running and the all-new Ghost Max 2. They're the shoes you deserve, designed to streamline your stride and help protect your body. Treat yourself to feel-good landings on an ultra-high stack of super comfy nitrogen-infused cushion that takes the edge off every step, every day. The Brooks Ghost Max 2. You know, technically, they're a form of self-care. Brooks, let's run there. Head to brooksrunning.com to learn more.
So I think it's because and I think both parties actually still need to be better on male issues. But I think that the Republican Party, in theory, at least is comfortable with saying that men should have and deserve a role in society in a different way than Democrats do. And so for me, I still think that there's a pretty big Christianity element. Obviously, evangelicals do vote more for the Republicans. And you know, who knows with this sort of shakeup of the parties, like where things are going to go. But I see a strong male role in fatherhood that Republicans continue to talk about and feel comfortable talking about, including preference for two-parent, mother-father families. And I think that type of emphasis on a male role, that there is something about being a father that is necessary to communities and to families, is something that the Republican Party offers. Is a different type of masculinity. I think that you are talking about a sort of strength and macho-ness. But for me, that is the essence of how to channel male aggression. Males are different than females. They're bigger, they're stronger, they have more testosterone, they're more prone to violence, aggression. And so there has to be some way to channel that. And I think that there is a societal necessity and a societal goodness to channeling it through the need to care for your wife, the need to care for your children, and the need to therefore create communities for them. So you need to be firemen, you need to be policemen, you need to be in the military. Like, you need to provide for your family, for your community in that way. Like, how do you channel that? And so it requires a lot of things. It requires acknowledging that there are sex differences that are not merely societally driven, that they are biologically driven sex differences, that men exist and that men are good and that men can and should be channeled. But I think if you say that there is no role for fathers, that all familial structures are equally good, which I think, it's not that the Democrats says that out loud, but I think it's a sort of a need to be nice thing, that it does ultimately erase the role for men as fathers. And I think ultimately men become artificial. They become lost. So my like draw for the Republican parties and for men is actually not something that I think Republicans are very strong on, but I do think that it is real. I do think there's something there. Was that in view in this last election? I don't know, but at least that's my opinion of it.
Well, I think part of it too is just how you message and how you project. And Donald Trump, for all of his many faults, he projects that alpha male energy, that men, I think, are clearly drawn to. And when I was thinking back to Democratic presidential candidates, I would argue that the Democrats haven't had a presidential candidate with that sort of vibe, that sort of feel, since maybe Bill Clinton, which it's been quite a while, right? And it's more, I would argue, than just showing up at UFC events or going on Joe Rogan's podcast, right? And it's not even necessarily about being a male, weirdly enough. I think back to like Margaret Thatcher, who was a totally kick-ass, strong, she had that energy and clearly not a man. And so it seems to me that the Democratic Party is kind of, the things that animate a lot of Democratic voters, particularly primary voters, are not necessarily what I guess I would call some of the qualities that are associated or appeal to men as opposed to women. I want to get your take on that.
Yeah, I guess I'm just not sure. Like, yes, I guess Trump is more macho than Kamala Harris, than Hillary Clinton, than Joe Biden. But I hate narrowing the idea of the things that men need and the things that men care about to be like, I don't know, speaking loudly, or I don't know, that's like the superficial things that we like, I don't know, even coolness or whatever. But and Obama was manly, like he's athletic and he's tall, but he might be nerdy.
But yeah, there you go. See, yes, that whole kind of, that's exactly it, is that, I remember Chris Rock had this line saying that, Obama is cool for a politician, but not like cool for like an actual person. And I really think the Democrats were great at nominating and pulling up these people who are these sort of brainiac technocrat sort of people. But that's not going to, that sort of, presentation of self is not going to appeal to to a lot of non-college educated young men. And so that, to me, when I hear Donald Trump speak, I can totally get how your typical Joe Rogan listener can be like, yeah, that guy, as opposed to Kamala Harris or Pete Buttigieg or a lot of the folks that Democrats talk about as candidates. I think if you're concerned about that demographic, I don't see that person being able to reach that group. We hope you enjoyed this preview of our supporters exclusive midweek show. If you'd like to hear the rest of the episode, we hope you'll consider becoming a supporter. Supporters get ad-free access to all of our shows, membership in our Politics Guys Discord group where you can join in on the conversation, and other benefits at different levels of support. To become a supporter, go to patreon.com/politicsguys. You can also support us through Venmo, we're @politicsguys, or through PayPal. You'll find all of our support links in the show notes as well as at politicsguys.com/support. And if you'd like to get the midweek show, but you're not in a position to become a financial supporter, that's not a problem. Just send me an email at mike@politicsguys.com, and I'll be happy to get that set up for you.
This podcast is part of the Democracy Group,